Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today I am privileged to be joined by Rav Moshe Tuvia Lieff, Rav of Agudas Yisrael Beis Binyamin of Flatbush. Thank you, Rabbi Lieff, for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Now I mentioned the books you read, the people who write them. The Rav has not yet written a book with ArtScroll, maybe sometime soon. But today we're here to discuss a very special book, and really a very special project known as Vayimaen, which has taken the world by storm in a relatively short period of time. And we'll get into the popularity of it, but I'm going to jump right in to the question that I think many people wonder, and based on the Rav's experience of being a Rav in Minneapolis for 19 years, now Rav for so long in Flatbush, and being in the rabbinate, and being a Marbitz Torah, and being a Mashpia, and dealing with people, and hearing the problems of the day so close up. What was the Rav's reaction when he heard that there's a project focusing on Shmiras Einayim? And what the backdrop of the question is, growing up, and I'm sure it was like that for the Rav as well, Kedusha and Shmiras Einayim was something we never spoke about. It was the unspoken issue. A person worked on it. It was, Beinoi uvein HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
The proverbial elephant in the room.
So that's the elephant in the room. How did the Rav feel about a project like Vayimaen that is primarily focused on Shmiras Einayim?
So initially, I can't say I was skeptical, but I was not interested. It didn't talk to me, Sometimes you meet a person, it doesn't talk to me until life becomes real. And I heard different people that were doing it. It sounded very nice. It's going to be inspirational. It's going to be wonderful to ignite. But I try to be more meat and potatoes with Teichen. And then they got Reb Shalom, Agoyin Reb Shalom Kamenetsky to do one, who I'm very close with. He's a tremendous Talmid Chacham. Consider him a close friend. I said, Reb Shalom's doing this, maybe it's something I should look into. And I did a few of them. And it sounded incredible because that's how Klal Yisrael tackles issues. It's step by step, shlav achar shlav. My brother Shlita, Rashiv Munsi, told me many years ago, he says, the kevesh in front of the menorah is different than the kevesh in front of the mizbeach. Because the kevesh, the avoid of the mizbeach, you slide up, you slide down. When it comes to Torah, it's step after step, shlav after shlav. You purchase, you go weiter. And that's exactly what Vayimaen is. It champions the moment. It's not about changing your life monumentally, turning yourself into an instant static forever. It's realizing that one moment of control is incredible. And all those that are doing it, B'chesed Elyon, Talmidei Chachamim, Marbitzei Torah, Mashpiyim, they do it so eloquently, so passionately, and with a lot of humor, a lot of integrity. And I'll tell you honestly, the one it affects the most is me. The Balei Musa say, how do you know if your drasha, your shmooze, your shir was effective? It affects you. And I know that when I give over a gedank, an idea, I was just telling my Rebbe, Rav Nosson Sherman Shlita, was my 7th grade Rebbe, I'm very close with him. He couldn't believe this is done in 2-3 minutes. In 2-3 minutes, you can change the world. And that's, I think, what Vayimaen is doing. And the recognition is literally worldwide.
So to address this, the elephant in the room, that question, what kind of changed the Rav's perspective on that? That whereas, maybe Kedusha and Shmiras Einayim used to be, at least in the Litvish world, maybe in the Chassidish world, there might be more of a dogish, more of an emphasis on those areas, and even speaking about it openly. Whereas I think in the Olam HaYeshivas, typically, this was a topic that was kind of under the radar, and each person worked on it individually. And over here we have a movement whose success is unquestionable because we see how much it's impacting people. But just this component and this detail of the fact that it's being spoken, obviously in a very edel, gentle, dignified way, but that it's being spoken about publicly.
It's very much like Shovavim. As a child, I don't remember the programs of Shovavim in New York or all over the world. And now it's become a national movement where people realize there's a need for Shmiras Haguf, Bris, Einayim. But I think the Maila of Vayimaen, it takes it to a level that everyone can be influenced by. And it's not in our world, when we grew up. You had the Hasidic call it a Gute Yid, or you had a Heilige Yid. That was somebody that was Bekedusha, V'tare, a Rebbe, Rosh Hashiva, Rov, a Goyin, a Tzaddik, a Moshe, Zatzar, a Biankiv, the Satmar Rebbe. Heilige Yidden did heilige things. But Magushim Dike Yidden did Magushim Dike things. You couldn't see Rav Yashiv eating a ribsteak. It was beneath his dignity. And I think that's what Vayimaen introduced, that a Yid has to fly above the brambles and bushes, not to get caught, but beneath the radar. There's something was passt nicht. It just doesn't fit with who I am. And Vayimaen introduces that every single Yid with a neshama, nishmas kamimal, every Yid at any level has something that's beneath his dignity. And it sort of says, I don't gotta look, I don't gotta see, I don't gotta run, I don't have to be enticed, I can control myself. I am, to a certain degree, the master of my destiny, b'siyata d'shmaya. And that's the chiddush of Vayimaen. It's little, in criminal, sort of minuscule steps where it's incremental, where you just keep on growing. You don't even realize you're growing, and you don't have this goal to grow. It's just to control that moment. It's just to take some control of your life, and all of a sudden you feel like you're a gavra, you're somebody.
Yeah, and I think it's obvious to point out that the nisyonis in this area are clearly greater today than ever. It sounds like a cliche and it sounds trite, but it's true. With the advent of technology and the expansion of technology and how we're inundated with so many things coming from different directions, they say over from the Gedolim, whichever Gadol it was, that one trip on the subway today you'll see more than you saw in a lifetime in the shtetl, whoever that's attributed to. But there's no question that the nisayon today of what's thrown at us is on a different level, and different types of challenges need different responses.
I was once asked to speak about technologies. I was talking to Moreno Baron Schachter Zatzal, and he told me the internet has removed boundaries. There used to be boundaries, and that's been whited out. And exactly like you're saying, I always talk about the fact, I say that you find someone naming a daughter or a granddaughter after an Alter Baba from Europe. And there was shtetl in Europe, believe it or not, that it was called a Zogeke. And the Zogeke would read Senerena Friday night, which is a synopsis of the parsha, in Yiddish to a bunch of ladies who were illiterates. They couldn't read. They could not read Ivrit. They couldn't read Lashon Kodesh. They couldn't daven from a siddur. So why are you naming your brindy after the Alter Baba brindy who couldn't read? Because the Alter Baba brindy, exactly like you said, wasn't exposed during the course of her whole lifetime. But our kids are exposed to 1 hour in the mall or 1 hour on the subway. So there's got to be a built-in safeguard. Zulu mazu. The same way we find when it comes to Ilchas Kashrus, anything that's not kosher, there's something else that can mirror that taste and that effect and that texture. If Hashem created internet, it's because we can deal with it. And there are things that we can do, the technology, to harness it l'toiv and not l'ra, to filter it, but also to realize we're not so grounded by it, or we're not so seduced by it, or we're not so enslaved by it. Of course, that's the beauty of Shabbos, when you put it all away. It shows you can be in control. That's what Vayimaen does. I think it gives you the ability to see, I'm bigger than that. It's always trying to dumb me down.
Right.
You're a garlish, you're a Rusha Marisha, forget about it. And no, there's no forget about it. It's a nice saying in Brooklyn, forget about it. I heard now they're taking down that sign. There's certain signs they want throughout the country taken down because they're not happy with the jargon. But forget about it is a Brooklyn terminology. And that's you have to tell the Yitzhara, forget about it. Sometimes I'm going to forget about you.
Now, this new book was written by our dear Chaver Rabbi Yechiel Spiro, who did an amazing job. I've been going through the manuscript as it's being prepared for print. This conversation is taking place shortly before the book hits the press. And what I noticed about the manuscript, besides that it's written so eloquently in Rabbi Yechiel's classic style. He took whoever has done these videos, and he's not only written them up in such a beautiful way, but he's added to it and he's expanded to it. And I noticed that more than half of the entries are actually not directly about Shmiras Einayim. They're about, like the Rav said, being a master of your domain. Control. Being able to say no, being able to say yes. Basically, being a good yid in every situation, having the power to do the right thing, which kind of really the Vayimaen movement may have started with the slogan of setting your eyes on greatness, but it's much broader than just Shmiras Einayim. It's about really having the strength that a yid needs to live as a yid.
If you live life with control, it's a flavor enhancer, meaning, as someone who's been on diets and, tries to deal with Gashmias and Ruchnias, I firmly believe Gashmias and Ruchnias are the exact opposites. It's so easy to gain Gashmias and so hard to lose, so hard to gain Ruchnias and so easy to lose.
Right.
I look at a donut, I gain 5 pounds. I mean, that's just the type of a person. But it's a flavor enhancer. When you're on a diet, and whatever you're eating has a flavor to it. It tastes like something. You could smell the celery from the other room. It's really insane, but a real Baal Taiva should be curbing his appetite and eating certain amounts and certain foods, and it's going to be flavorful. Same thing with life. The same thing with Hilchos Taharas and Mishpacha. Anything you think about, the control is not just to fight the Yetzer Hara, but it enhances your Gashmias, it enhances your Ruchnias. You feel like you've accomplished, you're somebody, you're something, you're forced to be reckoned with. They say, Agon Matasyahu Zatzal mentioned several times that he knew he was taking on the Sitra Achra, the Yetzer Hara, and that he would be taken down by it. And many in the know say that shortly after City Field, he became unwell, as if the Sitra Achra Taka fought him on it, but he was willing to be Meiser Nefesh. Let me be honest with you. Matasyahu came to an Aguda convention we had, the Aguda Midwest, I was very involved with it. And there were many Rabbanim in the room, and he started talking about the internet that we barely knew about. He started talking about a motor car. You wouldn't allow someone to drive a motor car without instructions. You wouldn't just hand them the keys to a child. And somebody said, a very choshev Rav, who in this room, this goes back many years ago, has a kehila where there isn't one TV in a misbal's house? And nobody raised their hand. So the consensus was, should we first talk about TV, then worry about the internet? But Matasyahu understood that the internet was a very intense, lurking danger that can change Klal Yisrael. I think Rav Elyud Brudny said many years ago, we were marching towards our destiny, Mashiach, and then the Yetzer Hara sent a monkey wrench in the internet. But Lamaisa, it's exactly as you're saying, Rabbi Yitzhak. Koyach of Vayimaen is to teach control to youngsters, to older people. Rabbi Lapyan Zatzal had a boch, I think Rabbi Yankel Bender just mentioned this recently, who said to the Mashgiach in Kfar Hasidim, he's going to Tel Aviv for a bris. I said, how could you go to Tel Aviv for a bris? He said, I'm going to be careful, Rabbi. He says, Rabbi Lapyan Zatzal, Again Tzadik said, he has one eye, and he can barely see out of the other eye, and he's terrified to go to Tel Aviv. And you with zwei fleischige Augen, 2 fleshly eyes, you have no problem? Cavalier to go to Tel Aviv, the Bacha didn't go. So my point is, it's teaching us we don't need to go there to reach for that, to say that. Once you learn to control yourself from where you're looking, what you're saying, how you understand and appreciate people. My Shviga Zangazun says everybody's basically good. People are good people. They mean to be good. So if you're looking for the good in people, you'll find it. It all depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, a yid is inherently good. It's all about bringing it out. And I think that that's really what this project, the Vayimaen project, and the Heilige Yidden who are behind it, anonymously behind the scenes, we don't see them, and they're putting out these videos every day with a tremendous amount of, I should mention,
expertise, artistry,
creativity.
By the time they finish with what I said, I can't believe I said it.
It's beautiful.
It's unbelievable. It's magnificent.
It's really magnificent, and obviously a tremendous outlay of money, but it's being done l'shem shamayim. And whatever those videos have done on a creative level, visually, this book does perhaps even more, because the written word is is as powerful as anything.
Right.
And I think this book will be a handbook for people to navigate life's challenges in general, but not just challenges, giving people the wherewithal, the fortitude to get through a day.
There's one more nakuda.
Yeah.
Besimcha, meaning
Right.
it's a feel-good kind of mitzvah. You feel accomplished. Steht, "V'lo yitzasor levavchem v'acharinechem asher atem zanim achareim." Zok Rashi, "Ayin roya v'alev chomed v'guf psaris ta'averis." It's out of order. It should say, "V'lo yitzasor acharei einechem v'acharei levavchem." Ayin roya. So as a Yidden tells Yeshiva, Moshe Elfan Zatzal said, he give 20 people the newspaper to read, the kosher newspaper. And they read it from cover to cover, and you give them a quiz and they all fail. Why? Because each person is reading what they're sensitive, calibrated to see. This one wants to know about politics, this one about ArtScroll, the economy, sports if there's sports in the paper. Zok the Torah Akdosha, where's your heart? Because the heart will cause you to see what you see and not see what you're not supposed to see. Ayin roya, what the heart wants us to see, that alev choybin and the guf does the avera. If you're in the right place and your heart's in the right place, you're not going to see the wrong things. If you walk down Lower East Side with Moreno and Moshe Zatzal, and there were different sights to see, you didn't see anything. You were with Reb Moshe, you held his hand. You saw the world through Reb Moshe's eyes. You're looking for a Yid to give comfort to. I had a Rebbe, Reb Chaim Stein, Zatzal, tells al Shiva. He was unbelievable. I was echet lo with him chavrusa. So by Shloshim, that the Munkacher Rebbe, Zayin Gesund, the Grace Tzaddik, also came and spoke, because Reb Chaim was his Rebbe. I said, was pshat, the Gemara sagt, Ma Hashem Alekecha shel meimach, kim liras Hashem Alekecha. In fact, the Gemara, v'chiyira Shemai milsa zutrasa, is it nothing? In Lagabe Moshe milsa zutrasa. But that's the kasha. If to Moshe Rabbeinu milsa zutrasa, how does it help us? We're not Moshe Rabbeinu. I tell you that Lagabe doesn't mean in the perspective of Moshe. If you're holding Moshe Rabbeinu's hand, milsa zutrasa. If you have a Rebbe, a Rav, a Rosh Hashiva, a Machanech, a Zayda, and you walk through life holding his hand, or the Mora's hand for a lady, it's the easiest thing in the world. So I said, if you hold on to Reb Chaim, Yerushalayim was Milsa Zutrasa. And that's really the idea. The idea is, it's a hand to hold on to. It's a way of conducting your life. And you know who's most spoiled? The kids. We had issues sometimes with sneers in Minneapolis with some ladies, very wonderful ladies, they just didn't get it.
Right.
So they said, when the Koil's going to come, they're going to learn. It didn't happen. You know what happened? When the daughters came back from seminary and they said, Ma, you can't wear that. Ma, you can't wear that. Ma stopped wearing it. So now when the kids see that the parents and the father, who's out there and he's put together and he's worldly and he interacts with people, is careful and cautious and makes decisions based on not being led into temptation, boom. It's a gimme to the kids. They all want to be like their parents. And, you know, there was a Maisa many years ago. Rabbi Yankov Zatzal was Nifta. And there was a boy in Chicago going to the school that the Manayal of the school came in, and the Baba says, this kid's a little crazy. It was snowing outside, and the kid wouldn't stay in the barber shop. He kept on going outside on the street, and then every 10 minutes he'd come back, is it my turn yet? 5, 6, 7 times. He couldn't figure it out. The Manayal figured it out. They had made a Kabbalah. This goes back all those days. That for a week, anybody who's got a TV, nobody watches TV during the week of the Shiva of Rabbi Yankov in Chicago. And this kid saw that the barber had his TV on. So he just walked out in the snow.
Wow.
Isn't that an amazing story?
Amazing.
But that's Vayimaen every single day. Younger people, older people, people who are so used to looking around, casing out the joint, checking out the world, and the flies habayre. And Lamaisa, we show the Rebbeinu Shalom and ourselves that we're really great people.
So I wanted to ask the Rav, you know, you mentioned the story from years ago. From many decades ago, when the Rav was a Talmud at Tarvidasa Flatbush, and then in Telz, and then in Minneapolis as a Mardasra, and now in Flatbush. Such a perspective on life, having lived through so many monumental moments and such important junctures in our recent Jewish history, and how Klal Yisrael has evolved, has the Olam HaTorah has grown. What have you seen as the biggest change in terms of the challenges for a Frum Yid? And not just the internet. I'm talking about in raising mishpachas, and being mechanech children. Nebuch, the children who sometimes have a struggle connecting with our heritage, and it takes a lot of effort, boys and girls, to bring them over. What's the biggest difference?
Excellent question. I will say, bottom line, like the old song, Anachnu dor mitzviyan, we are an incredible door because of these nisyonis. Now, I do think that the basic difference between when I grew up and kids are growing up today, my father's outside was a Rav, big Talmud Chacham, Talmud Rav Rudim, he learned 9 years in Eretz Yisrael. He also taught for the Board of Ed, but you were physically handicapped, emotionally disturbed, like your father Zayin Gesund, who also was a Talmud Chacham and who also was able to interact in that world. My mother was a college math professor with a PhD from Columbia, so they made parnasa. And what kind of steak we had once a week? We had a very thin shoulder steak. Have you ever eaten shoulder steak? Most people don't eat shoulder steak. We had a simple house, 2-family house. We didn't have wall-to-wall carpeting. We didn't have chandeliers. We had second-hand furniture. Why? Was that insane? I mean, we easily could have had, my father never bought a new car. Mm-hmm. He bought Rabbi Aaron Schechter's used car. I mean, what's the pshat? Mm-hmm. They sent money to Eretz Yisrael. They supported yeshivas. They supported stuckas. Life was much simpler. Mm-hmm. Today, I think it's just become much more complicated, much faster. The exposure to the world is greater. They have the global village where any atrocity or whatever happens, everybody knows everything about. We're too busy with the news. And the Gashmias, you can't get away. Ramatl Pragamansky Zatzal was an incredible Baal Machshove, and the Rebbe of my Rebbe, Rav Gifta, Reb Chaim Stein. He said, I think it was to Moshe Sternberg sein gesund. After World War II in France, he told him, I'm very worried about the next door, about their success, about their Gashmias. Will they be able to deal with it? Will they give the money the way they're supposed to give it? Will they live lives that takes them away from Yiddishkeit? So to us, I think, honestly, I mean, right now, I'm not going to mention the city. It's a fantastic city. It's very near to my heart. The shtat is emptied out. Everybody went on winter vacation. To Arizona, to Florida. Who goes to winter vacation? Who went anywhere? When I was a kid, my brother and I, the other ones that flew out of town because we went to my grandparents in Cincinnati and grandparents in Montreal every other year. We flew on a plane. Who flew on a plane? And now kids go on their own, junkets all over the world, steakhouses. And again, I love Gashmias just like the next guy. But it's become such excess. Right. So, I was talking to David Shustel Shlita Shiva. I had to speak about technology. He says, Moshe, Tuvia. He says, if a kid has a geschmack and a taste, there's no competition. And it's not true. There's no competition. But how are they going to get their teeth sunk in with so much gashmias? Mm-hmm. So a little bit, we got to dumb down. Even though Rabbi Yankov and Rabbi Moshe Zatzal had a monumental argument about this. Rabbi Yankov, Rabbi Moshe said that there's too much gashmias, the Gvirim are ostentatious. And
that was 35 years ago.
They're ostentatious. Yeah. And so we got to knock it down. And Rabbi Yankov says, if we, for lack of a better word, dumb down the gashmias, we'll dumb down their hasagas and stucca. And he had the day. So that's the duality, to be able to give tremendous amounts of stucca, but not be so fakoived in the gashmias where we're telling Hashem, well, we don't think Mashiach's coming. Why would I have a $5 million house? Or kids, elementary school kids going to steakhouses. Now, I'll tell you a story. Okay, it's a silly story. I was in Miami Beach, very close to Rav Gross, and you could still Stern runs the kollel over there, and I came to give shiurim in the kollel and also to speak for the shtat. So somebody took me to a restaurant, very nice, a nice restaurant. I could not believe what I heard. A fella asks the maitre d', the waiter, this says 40-ounce steak. Rabbi, you hear what I'm saying? 40 ounce. 16 ounces is a pound, 32 is 40-ounce steak. Is that before they cook it or after they cook it? He wanted to know if it's 40 ounces or really 37. I mean, I enjoy a steak. How much could you eat? But I could never push it. And right. I'm not saying the excess of everything in life, but Lamaisa, that definitely is very different than the way I grew up. And we did things and enjoyed life. And went places, but that's definitely a problem. Also, a little bit the inconsistencies, you can't be like Socrates, do what I say and not do what I do. You gotta live it. But because Elian, there are many people that live Torah and Asmodas Torah and Avonas Torah. I was by the Sarah Torah, my Shvager, Rabbi Dada Shlita, a very close Talmud of his. So I used to go every year to Reb Chaim before Yom Noraim, a little before El. Was all Zogen Doilem. For many years, what should I tell the Olam by Kol Nidra, by Nila, what should I tell him? Every year was something else. Once talk about the shofar. On Yom Kippur, talk about the shofar, talk about this, talk about that. And one time he told me, Zen Kaveh Itzim? The Kaveh Itzim La Torah? I said, yeah. Is that Shah? I said, no. At least 2-3 hours a day. In the Aguda and in most shuls, if you don't learn 2-3 hours a day, you push it. Excuse my French, a loser. Like, who even looks at you? So he thinks and he thinks and he thinks and he thinks the whole gamut of Kol HaTorah Kula, the Rishonim, the Acharonim, the Sefri, the Sefra, and Azok, Mer Lernen. That's what he told me, Mer Lernen. But today, Baruch Hashem, there is a lot of Mer Lernen.
Right.
But, commensurate with that, Chavetz Chaim at Yetzaharis, it's got to be Bechira Chavshis. So we have all these types that jumped up.
And luxuries end up becoming necessities.
100%. That's
part of the
100% true. And it's really sad because then it's not really a luxury.
Right.
I mean, everybody wants a luxury, not a
luxury
need.
is an extra, not a need.
Exactly. It's like, I need this. No, you want that. You don't need that. Okay, listen, my kids grew up in Minneapolis, a wonderful place to grow up. It was not a life of excess. People had money, people were comfortable, but they didn't go Meshuggah.
Bechlal, out of town is
very edel.
Out of town
it's a great place to raise children.
Yeah, more toned down.
Very toned down, and they're more real. Like, I said, people in the shul, people would say, when he's davening, he's talking to Hashem. He's talking to God. Like, you could see it. That was one thing about the Sfardim. They'd come visit because they did business with Best Buy or with Target. Corporate headquarters were in Minneapolis. And like, when these fellas daven, no one's telling them not to talk during Chazar Sashats. They were too busy davening. Like, they really believe it. You know why Baruch Hashem, there are Sfarim have Panasa? Because when they daven, that Kadosh Baruch Hu, they believe it. And when the Chacham says something, they do it. It's like a Munas Chachamim. It's ingrained. Simcha Wasman Zatzal, Shem Kim Dom, and Simcha Wasman Zatzal said that he says, why do you find that when the Litvisha and the Ashkenaz people talk, if they apologize, if this is the case, if that's the case, when a Sephardi rabbi talks, he hits him over the head. He says, because their Mesa was not dulled by the Haskalah. The Sephardim didn't have Haskalah. That's what he said. So there's this Emunas Chachomim that they have, and a real connection to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You walk into some of the shuls, they're saying Tillim with such fervor, with such real ernstkeit. And again, we have Litvish and Hasidish the same way also. I'm not minimizing what we are, but if you're asking me what I think the difference is between 30, 40 years ago and today, are these Nekudas, the excess in life, and the fact that, we have to be more consistent with our message to our children in every area, and especially in Alafat Torah, Mitzvahs, and Chesed, because that's what the kids want to be. They want to be like their parents.
I find that actually dovetails very well with this particular discussion of Vayimaen, because many of the speakers speak about this issue of Vayimaen being able to turn away not just from the inappropriate, but from excesses, from luxuries. Just because Yenim has it doesn't mean you have to have it. You'll be perfectly fine. But because we're human, and because the Rebbeinu Shalom created us with the midah of kinah, and because we want what other people have, so it's an avodah, and we need direction, we need chizuk. And that's really also part of this, under the rubric of Vayimaen, is this ability to be able to be satisfied with what we have. And that's why I think it's so interesting that of all things that the Rav chose was this Nekuda, which is really part of this whole campaign.
You talk about Bechiel Spiro. I was Zeiche, when I was a Kohen Geman in Tel Yeshiva, we had a Vad, a Musavad. And he, together with other people, some of Rosh Yeshiva were my Musavad. And you could see right then and there that he was something very special. He came from a wonderful family, comes from a wonderful family, wonderful brothers and sister, and Bechlal, his parents are incredible. But he's a real Ben Torah that gets the flavor of the sugya. And Rabitzi, I don't mean to fawn and to praise you, but it's a thrill to be sitting here with my Rebbe, who was not even my Rebbe, he was my English teacher in high school, we saw Hiska that taught us hashkofis and about kashrus when we were in science class. You bechesed also have a way of connecting to people and explaining things properly. So it's a don mitzuyan. We have very talented people. We saw Bessa, so many different people that can write properly and give over the flavor, and that's what our door needs. It needs flavor, it needs salz and pfeffer, it needs a geschmackheit. You know, that's what we need. Sitting on the Mizrach Wand is a bracha and a klala. The klala is you sometimes see how people are davening and they're not really connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you want to grab out and take that kid and pull him in and be like the Chavetz Chaim and whisper some words in his ear. And you see it happening right before your eyes. And then, of course, those parents that they're into the davening, their kids are into davening. There's a fellow in my shul, his followers into davening. His 8 o'clock from Lakewood are into davening. And you look at them, it's just mamish nechayach. You know, we live in a world where you have 18 periodicals, Poligos on the Bima, by the Aguda, of all these different things. This halacha, that halacha, you name it, we got it. So, the real conscientious misbal walks up there before davening starts, takes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's very busy. Hopefully not during the drasha, but certainly during Chazoras Hashatz, missing the boat. The Tzatmar Rebbe Zatzal would close farm in the middle of davening, get davening. Eis tefillah l'chud. In my father's Zatzal shul in Benson, and my father's Zatzal shul in Bensoners, very simple people. No such thing as davening without a jacket. Everybody does zip-up jackets and a cap. I never ever remember my father telling the people not to talk during davening. He just didn't talk during davening. Mm-hmm. These were not goyne Yisrael. Some might not even been Shemesh Shabbos, but you knew in shul you don't talk during davening. And we have to bring it back, the old-time religion. And I think we're doing it. And I think the medium of ArtScroll is nitshayach, and the concept of Vayimaen is nitshayach, and all these wonderful projects that people really care about Klal Yisrael. Where do you find it more than this terrible Eis Yaakov, many of us share, because Klal Yisrael is rallying around the flag, the Tehillim now, and the Shmiras HaShabbos, and Kashrus, and Taras Mishpacha, and Tzitzis. It's like human Kiyasupa, and Shema Yisrael. This fella had his 2 babies. He was talking at the EU in front of all these Goyim, and he's describing what his babies are like and how they're with Hamas. And then he stands up and screams. He could kill us. Shema Yisrael, like a Sardi, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's what we're doing now. Klal Yisrael is screaming Shema Yisrael, and it's only Mikamcha Yisrael Ge'echad B'aretz. Tefillin Moral Maksiv Bey, Mikamcha Yisrael. It complements each other. If we want to be Ma'achad Kodesh Brichu, we have to have Achas, and we have it now. All the Kiruv organizations, Leiv La'achim, Shuvah, they tell me that I'm only had a knock on the door, and now they're begging, take my kid.
There's an explosion.
Explosion, and it's real, and it's
from people
Torah. Exactly, and it's real, and it's for all the good things. It's for Torah, it's for mitzvahs, it's for tzitzis, it's for tefillin. So we're living really in an extraordinary time. I'm asking, it's a dangerous time, but the schar that the Olam has, I'll just say something I said on Vayimaen. Rebbe Shmuel Berenbaum, he asked the kasha. Yankov Avinu says, Eilech verena b'terem omos. For Reb Shmuel Avada, once Yosef is alive and Yankov has died, he'll never see his son. What's the chiddush? B'terem omos. This vort was told to me by the Heintiger Rosh Yeshiva, Rebbe Berenbaum. On the flight, I flew with my Rebbe. I was zeicher to do the Torah on him. I flew from Minneapolis, and I was koivim, I was maspid him. He says, Moshe, you don't know this vort from my father? I didn't know. I heard about it. Rabasha told me it's on the way. So he said like this. Now, it's such a controversial vort that Rav Nissim Wolpen Zatzal, who was the editor of the Jewish Observer, by the way, I was zeicher to write an article in the Jewish Observer about my Rebbe. He called me and asked me. It was so good it closed the magazine, meaning the last issue of the Jewish Observer was my issue, was one I wrote. Yes, exactly, that's true. It's true, last issue. And he called me up to ask me did he say this? Did he really say this? Because it sounded very controversial, or a chiddush. So Reb Shmuel said like this. Yankov says, I got to go see my son before I die. So Reb Shmuel, Reb Elchanan Zatzal, Hashem Yikam Dami, told the Bachram Baranovich, Geza the Chavetz Chaim. Run and see the Chavetz Chaim. Valdo, you'll be able to see the Chavetz Chaim. You'll be allowed in his mechitzas, his environs. But l'asad lavai, would they have a haracha who the Chavetz Chaim is? you'll never be able to see the Chavetz Chaim. Said Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, the Masmed Hador, who Mora Moshe Zatzal was calling up Rosh Yeshivas to come to Asifa, he said, I can't call Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, the Gemara is too tired to him. Reb Moshe said on my Rebbe, too tired to him. Said Reb Shmuel, Avadi Yankiv Avinu, certainly he was the Ishtom Yeshiv Eholim. But Yosef, he faced such a terrible Nisayon Eshes Petifa that according to the Medrash, it was more difficult than all the Nisyonis of Avinu, Yitzchak, and Yankiv, all combined. According to another Medrash I found, she came down to him every single day for 2 years. I'm your ticket out of here. Vayimaen. Chazal called him Yosef HaTzadik. Said, Yankiv, I better go see him before I die, because now I could see him. But La'asad Lavai, where they understand the haracha of Yosef, he's a tzaddik, he didn't give in, I may not be zeicher to be in his mechitzas. That's what Reb Shmuel said. The Masmed Hadar said. That's why he understood the door, all the nisyanis of the door. So I'm saying, Lefi Ani Astaiti, I think this is the door with the greatest nisyanis since the history of the world. It's worse than the Roman orgies and all the mishigas that we had in the past. It's instant gratification, instant every is in the world, and no one has to know about it. It's between you and God. And what Oimed ben Nisayan, a lot of tzaddikim. A lot of tzaddikim under the radar. A lot of tzaddikim that are doing great things. And that's Vayimaen. Vayimaen is uncovering and revealing that tzaddik in every single man, woman, and child, you can be a tzaddik. You can not look, control, not eat, not taste, not grab, not take, and you'll be a tzaddik. The tzaddik to the extent that maybe lost at love, the grace of tzaddikim are not going to be able to get too close to you. That's Adar.
Wow.
That's
on that note, I have to thank the Rav, of course, for being here, which is a tremendous covet for us. But thank you in general for the thousands of hours of Torah and Ashkafa and inspiration that you've given to me personally, and to Gans Klal Yisrael, people on Nene from the Rav Shiurim now that they're disseminated on all different types of platforms. It's not limited just to the beautiful shul on Avenue L. So many people are benefiting from the Rav's hashpah. So here's an opportunity to thank you for all those years of dedication and devotion. And my humble bracha continued, Hatzlacha, and being mashpia on so many Tyre Yidden, and giving over that flavor, the way I see it, the beauty of Yiddishkeit and the simcha of Yiddishkeit, which the Rav embodies, to be able to give that over day in and day out with such a lichtigkeit, and it's such a kiddush Shem Shemayim, and we're so grateful for it. So thank you again. Amen.
You should continue being Marbitz Torah la'alfei alofim, and it is a schus to be here in ArtScroll. I'm not pandering to my Rebbe of Nosson Sherman, but just there's a concept called kedusha, like we spoke about. And I mentioned this before to Rav Nosson, and I think to yourself as well, that the Torah Kedusha tells us Moshe Rabbeinu encounters Hasnein and Ukol. He saw what nobody else saw. He read the road signs, which is important in life. Bilam couldn't read the road signs. His donkey's talking to him, and he's arguing with the donkey. When was the last time a donkey talked to you? He couldn't read the road signs. Moshe Rabbeinu did. Ramat Zatzal said it was a pula of his Eirus, meaning people saw and only he saw. And the Bereshim says, Al takrav haloim, don't go any closer, it's intense kedusha. Shal nal chamarilecha, take off your shoes, the mokem hashata oimid admas kodesh. And the question is, Miman of Shach, if it's admas kodesh, back up 20 paces, 20 parsos. And if not, why take off your shoes? And Hashem said, there's the mokem kodesh. Al takrav haloim, don't draw any closer. It says the Ksava Kabbalah, there are two places of kedusha. There's admas kodesh and a maimed of kedusha. Admas kodesh, Har Miriah, the Beis Hamikdash, Yeshiva, Koil, Beis Yankiv, a room with Svarim. Then there's a Maimed de Kedusha, where a person, Vumegate, Vumestate, wherever you stand, create Kedusha. If you didn't go and tour Italy under the right auspices and with good people, they're shafing a Makim Kaddish wherever they go. Imagine we taught our children, wherever you go, it's a Makim Kaddish. Well, this is Rahway, I think, the shtetl called, to think that ArtScroll has created a Migdash Mad in Rahway, and I'm sure one day Rahway is going to be like a Gleisa Shtot, but a lot of Yidden living here. And that's what you're doing, Yitzi, and that's what Vayimaen is doing, and that's what ArtScroll is doing, teaching Yidden, Mokim Ashata Oimer Admas Kodesh. And the Mela, you got to act that way.
Right.
And you have to act like an Ish Kodesh or an Isha, has kedusha, bas kedoshim. It's a big schos, and Ben Shem is going to help us out. That will be zecher to the ultimate kedusha, the Beis Hamikdash. Meher v'yameinu, amen.
Amen. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.